Several times in the past, I've mentioned keeping a neutral spine without really going into detail as to what that means. So what I'll show here is a method to ensure that your spine is in that neutral position. What I'm doing here is using any rod of sufficient length, in this case a mop because that's all I had, and I'm holding it against my back to stay in contact with the back of my head, the T-spine, and my sacrum. I'm also engaging my abdominals so that my lumbar spine can lay a bit flat against the rod as well, and I will go over in a later clip as to how to do that. If your back rounds and the mop pulls away from your sacrum, then that might mean you have rigidity along your hamstrings or in your glutes. If you find when attempting this drill that the rod doesn't actually lift away from your sacrum but instead goes way up your ass crack, then what's probably happening is your lower back is tight or your hip flexors are tight, causing your hips to tilt forward. And see, as I fix this, I bring my lumbar spine in contact with the rod and keep that flat back. Sometimes this hip tilt can be fixed by doing this exercise where I lay on the ground and I keep my lower back flexed and pulled away, and then I try to flex my abs, flex my glutes to flatten my back against the floor, bearing in mind that I do not want to lift my sacrum or pelvis away from the floor. By elevating my hips off of the floor, I allow a bit more of a stretch of the lower abdominals so I can kind of better proprioceptively understand what it is I'm trying to engage in order to tilt my hips. The whole purpose of mastering the neutral spine does manifest when you observe the squat. Oftentimes when people are attempting to keep this neutral spine, they will put a little too much flexion in that lower back and stick their butt out a bit too far. And this will quickly be undone by the time you get to the bottom of a squat, because in order to reach that depth, you're going to ultimately tilt your hips down and it's going to fatigue the lower back prematurely. The adjustment that I make is subtle, but what I do is similar to what I had done on the floor in the previous clip, where I flex my glutes and I flex my lower abs in order to tilt the hips backwards. By relieving some of that constraint on my lower back, my hip extensor muscles no longer have to compensate for that lost range of motion quite as much, and I'm able to keep that neutral spine and brace my core better for the squat.